Are we ready to begin?
Yes, Mayor, we are ready.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the October 4th, 2022 City Council special meeting. Meeting has been called to order. And if I may have roll call. May I have roll call, please? I can do it. Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mason. Vice Mayor Mason. Mayor Medina. Here. Next, we'll move on to public comments for items not on the agenda. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on any items that are not listed, in addition to the closed session items, which there are two. One is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 and conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section, again, 54957.6. One is in regards to the Assistant City Manager, and one is in regards to the San Bruno Management Employee Association. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on either of those two closed session topics or items not on the agenda? I am seeing no hands up at this time. So with that, we will go ahead and bring it back to the council. And what we will be doing is the City Council will be going into closed session. There is at this time not any reportable actions. However, on this same Zoom link, we will be coming back to continue on to announcements and then our two items of conduct of business. With that said, I'll ask council and staff to go into closed sessions, then we will return to this link.
Yes, and Mayor, just to clarify, we expect to return at 6 p.m.
Thank you kindly for saying that, just so there's expectation. Thank you very much. Again, ETA is 6 p.m. If we find that it is beyond that, we'll try to communicate that as well, but our ETA is expected back at 6. Thank you very much. Okay, I think we have all council members and staff. I'm going to go ahead, and we have come out of closed session, but we'll return at the conclusion of the meeting to conclude closed session. But with that, I want to go back to the agenda. We wanted to keep to our 6 o'clock commitment for those that are coming and tuning in. And we will move on to number 5, announcements and presentations. Recology and San Bruno have partnered to offer a community cleanup, which is this Saturday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. sharp at 975 Sneath Lane. Participants can have an opportunity to unload up to 3 cubic yards of waste. You will have to show proof of residency, and you have to be a San Bruno resident. And they can include bulky items, e-waste, appliances, latex paint, but no dirt, rocks, or concrete. If you have any questions, please contact Recology at 650-583-8536. That's 650-583-8536. And if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on that announcement, seeing none, we'll move on to conduct of business. And we'll go ahead and lead with the item A, adopt a resolution approving various curb marking changes on Darby Place and Oxford Lane. And at this time, if I could turn it over to City Hall, and if I can ask our Public Works Director, Mr. Lee.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members.
Through the mayor, just quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Director Lee.
I apologize. I do apologize. I was moving too quick. I apologize. Councilmember Hamilton.
No worries. I have been advised by the city attorney that due to the proximity of my residence to the subject of this issue, that I need to recuse from this item, so I will be doing so now. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note for the record that Councilmember Hamilton on the conduct of business 6A has recused himself, and now will turn off his microphone as well as his camera. And then we will turn it over to Mr. Lee.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, we did have a item 5A announcements for Recology.
And I did that. And I asked for public comment, and there was none.
6. No, that one, yeah.
All right, I think we're good to go for 6A. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. My name is Matt Lee, Public Works Director for the City of San Bruno. I'm going to be presenting the various curb marking changes on Darby Place and Oxford Lane item with you tonight with Fire Marshal Slice and our City Consultant Traffic Engineer, Saeed Fakhri. Before we get started, I want to kind of just go through the agenda for the presentation. We will start first with kind of the objective for this item and why it's on the council. A little bit of a background with the situation and where we are to date, and then we will move into existing conditions and the proposed curb striping with the city's consultant traffic engineer, and then we'll end tonight with tonight's recommendation and any questions and comments. The objective for tonight is for council to consider a resolution approving various curb marking changes on Darby Place and Oxford Lane. As you can see, Darby Place and Oxford Lane resides on the west side of San Bruno, bounded by Highway 35, Interstate 280, and Crystal Springs Road. On this map, it's highlighted in red, and the north arrow is pointing up on the page. For background, the city has received requests from residents of Skyline Park.
Through the chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, Matt, but maybe it's just me, but I'm not seeing the slides change. I didn't see a map. I just see the first slide.
Councilmember Salazar is correct. So if we could try to start that up again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. And as we're doing that, what we will be doing is having staff make their presentation. We will see if there's any comments, or I'm sorry, questions on the presentation from council, then going to the members of the public. I'll give you just a little bit of warning in case you want to offer your comments. You can raise the virtual hand, and then we'll start to call you in. So just to let you know. So let's try, Mr. Lee, if you can try that again.
Yes, let me know when you see the location map show up on the screen.
I'm still just seeing the list of slides on the left and the first slide displayed.
See up at the top, try that.
There you go.
I see.
Oh,
We saw
now it's
the
gone.
elevation.
Okay, I see the map now.
Perfect,
There,
thank you.
and
Thank
it's
you.
full picture. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll, thank you for letting me know. I just wanted to kind of reorient everybody again. Oxford Lane and Darby Place, marked here in red, is located on the west side of San Bruno, bounded by Highway 35, Interstate 280, and Kristen Springs Road. These will be the streets that are in question or in discussion tonight. For background, the city received requests from residents of Skyline Park for Darby Place and Oxford Lane to enforce parking regulations on those streets. Some residents are parking in a manner where it either blocks entrances, accesses the entrances, or for emergency and fire access. For the past 15 years, it was believed that it was understood that Darby Place and Oxford Lane were private streets, so much so that the homeowners association at Skyline Park placed private street signs on those roads entering those streets. But at the beginning of the year, the city engineer and the city attorney have concluded that Darby Place and Oxford Lane are actually public streets, as shown in the final subdivision maps. Because of that, the city sent the homeowners association a request to remove the private street signage. And because there are now deemed public streets, we've moved into the discussion of the fire code and the potential width of the streets. And I'm going to ask Fire Marshal Slice to come up and talk about the California Fire Code.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Fire Marshal?
I'm not going to bore you guys with details. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. Fire Marshal Schleiss, to review this one slide about code requirements according to the 2019 California Fire Code with local amendments in our municipal code. So in multiple areas in the fire code, it spells out the minimum width of a fire road, and it's 20 feet. This allows 2 fire trucks pass simultaneously through the road. So referencing the top section is both Appendix Ds on this particular slide, and also in Chapter 503, Chapter 5, Section 503, it references the minimum width of a fire road should be 20 feet. And then on Section D, which is Appendix D in the fire code at the very end, 103.4, it talks about dead ends. At the end of the dead end, longer than 150 feet, you need to provide a fire department turnaround, where that's where it gets into the 96 foot diameter cul-de-sac. Thank you.
And so with that interpretation from the fire marshal, staff went to the Traffic and Parking Committee on August 3rd and provided a recommendation based on the fire code to red curb certain areas of Darby and Oxford, as will be shown later in the discussion. Residents attended the TSPC meetings and provided public comments, both for and against the staff recommendation. And after a long discussion, the TSPC concurred with staff recommendations with no changes. And so that's kind of the background that we have for the current item. And I'm going to ask for our city consultant traffic engineer, Saeed Fakhri, to come up and talk about existing conditions and the proposal at hand.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and member of the council and member of public. My name is Saeed Fakhri. I'm a consultant traffic engineer from TJK. So looking at the existing condition, the picture on your left, standing on the cul-de-sac looking north on Darby Lane, Darby Place. So you can see actually the couple of cars on your left that's parked and blocking the entrance to the units. And then on your right picture, you can see a couple of cars parked in front of possibly garages and extending to the traffic lane. Again, looking at Darby Lane, this Darby Place this time is looking toward the cul-de-sac, and you can see at the end the cul-de-sac, and also the cars parked on your right, blocking the entrances. The cul-de-sacs are all outside the city right of way, except one that will be eliminated, one parking spot, and you can see those later on, and then two will be smaller spaces. So this is again looking at Darby Place, looking north, and you can see the extension of the car park blocking the travel lane in case of emergency. On Oxford Lane, you have two legs that's running, the north leg, I call it, and the south leg, and then the other legs that goes north-south. So these are east-west. On the north leg, you can see the cars are parking on the left and the right. It's legally spots, and we are not changing any of those. On the Oxford Lane South, you're also looking at on the right side of the street, those are cars that are parked legally on spot. We're not changing. And on the left, you can see the extension because the driveway is not long enough, so that one car is extending. Some of these extensions, we are not doing any red curve or anything, but probably during the enforcement, the PD will make a judgment if they're blocking the pathway. Here is looking at the Oxford Lane and north-south toward the cul-de-sac, and you can see the left cars that are on the left side on the cul-de-sac, and one before that, they're all legally parked, and we are not changing those areas. The one on the right that's blocking possibly a garage door, those are the ones that we are doing red curves. So vehicles are currently parked on Darby Place cul-de-sac and Oxford Lane, some of them impede sidewalk, driveways, or travelways. Fire department and police department has performed a site assessment, and they have determined what parking restriction would be necessary. There are areas in this proposals, if the city council approves it, to paint no parking fire lane that's not curved. So we're suggesting the standard 6-inch striping with no parking fire lane stamp on it with 4-inch lettering, and that's the standard practice. So you're looking back at Darby Place, the cul-de-sac, and the dark line shows the public right-of-way, and all the parking that you see numbered, those are all outside city. Most of them are outside city right-of-way. However, number 9, you can see it's completely inside the city right-of-way, and that's the area that's needed for fire apparatus to make a turnaround, and that parking space number 9 will be eliminated. And number 8 and 7 will be shortened, so still be usable for either motorcycles or smaller cars. And as the fire staff mentioned, the red curves are needed to meet with the fire code. The sections are noted, and also for the dead end at Darby Place, it's longer. The throat of the cul-de-sac is longer, 150 feet. So that's why we need to do the striping. However, on Oxford Lane, there are 2 cul-de-sacs, and they're shorter than 150 feet. So fire department doesn't need to have a turnaround area. So we are not suggesting to remove any parking spaces on the cul-de-sacs that's on Oxford. So this shows an aerial photo of Darby Place. As you can see, the cul-de-sac red on the bottom of the picture, and then the right side looking north, you can see all the red curves in front of the garages. And then some of the red curves are already existing, that's shown on purple pinkish color. And then on your left, you can see spots of red curve. Those are the entrances to the units that fire department needs those to be clear in case of emergency, and some people park there. On Oxford Lane, the road is not wide enough to have parking spaces on both sides of the road to meet the fire code. But however, there are no loss of parking required if resident park in a manner that not blocking pedestrian or travel way. We are not suggesting to remove any parking on Oxford Lane, legal parking. However, we are doing red curve in an area that people shouldn't really park for fire, for emergency. So looking at the exhibit on Oxford Lane, again, the pinkish color is the one that's already red. And we are looking at the north-south Oxford Lane on the right side. Those are all garages or carports. So we are doing red painting there. The cul-de-sac will remain. And then on the lower, the southern part, the east-west on Oxford, on the westbound, we are doing the red curve because parking is legally allowed on the right side of the road or about the southern side of the road, and the northern side, if somebody parked, then it will be blocking the path of the emergency vehicle, which will be less than 20 feet. You can see some of the cars are parked and extended to the travel lane, so they won't be able to extend if they have shorter driveways. In the conclusion, the proposed installation of new red no parking zones on Darby Place in Oxford with improved traffic circulation, pedestrian safety, and fire access, and comply with the current fire code. So for tonight's recommendation, it's to adopt a resolution approving various curb marking changes on Darby Place and Oxford Lane. And we are ready here, staff, for any questions.
Thank you all for the presentation and the information this evening. I see Mr. Lee has come to the podium for any questions. If we could stop sharing the screen, please. And at this time, colleagues, are there any questions on the presentation? Questions on the presentation? I see none at this time, so I would ask members of the public if you could please raise your hand. If you'd like to speak, you'll have up to 3 minutes to speak to the council on this topic and have any thoughts or questions that you may have. And if you would please, again, raise your hand, because once we go through, then I'm going to bring it back to the council, and we will not be coming back to the public, so we can have comments and deliberation. And I see 2 persons right now that wish to speak. So right now I see 2 persons, and if we could start to bring them in, please.
First speaker is Mike G. Mike G, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, Mike Gutierrez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I'm on Darby. I've been here for 30 years. My dad was the HOA president for 35 years. We own the building. It's the largest structure in the Skyline Park Homeowners Association. When we started calling the police department back in September of last year, it was to try to correct the parking behavior where people were parking perpendicular to their driveway, sticking out 15 feet into the driveway. When people did it on both sides of Darby, they would sometimes leave only 8 to 9 feet to get by. That was what we were complaining about. Over the last 25 years, being the son of the guy who was the president of the association, we've had multiple problems with parking on our thing. And every single time we have shown the city that it is public parking, all the parking areas that are specific to the Skyline Homeowners Association, we police ourselves, but we don't have any power in the right of way. And when someone would double park right in the middle of the street, we just need the police department to come and move that car out of the middle of the street. And they won't do that. And they haven't done that. And nothing that's being addressed by this proposal is going to stop that from happening in the future. So everything you're doing right now is not a response to what we've been harping on the city to correct. They're just going off on a tangent. So the perpendicular parking on Darby, because we brought it up with all these people, has mostly corrected itself. If it popped up again, what we needed the San Bruno Police Department to do is come out and say, your car is sticking out, blocking the right of way. And then those pictures of your person put up there where that white van is sticking out into the right of way. Yes, that's what we're trying to stop. But people blocking their own driveways, as Traffic Sergeant Page has pointed out, that is not something the police department enforces in the city of San Bruno. You can block your own driveway and they will not ticket or tow you. And if people are not allowed to block their own driveway, you're going to lose 40 to 60 parking spots for people on these two streets. So the big right curb, the big fire lane on the right side of the Oxford Lane and on Darby Place, they'll be wiping out parking spots, and there is no other place to park for these people. If you look at the width of every single street on Darby and Oxford, it's 36 feet wide from curb to curb. Every other street in San Bruno is 28 feet from side to side, and you allow parking on both sides of those curbs, leaving less than 15 feet in all of those situations. And I'm talking every street. On Darby and Oxford, we have 36 feet. And if you allow cars to hang out into the curb 3 or 4 feet, and you have 5 feet, 6 or 7 feet of parking on the other side, you're still well over 20 feet of drivable space there. And as far as the end of Darby goes, the city council changed the parking so we are in the city right away, not us. We used to have just that one side.
Thank you very much for your comments. And next speaker, please.
I'd also like to make a quick announcement for attendees that would like to raise their hand. Please select the raise your hand icon in order to speak. And if the attendees are participating by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. The next speaker is Michael Alberton. Michael Alberton, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, my name's Mike Alberton. I'm on 111 Darby Place, apartment number 3. I've been here for like 22 years. This issue was brought up years ago. I'm totally against any changes on Darby Place. It's gotten, parking's got a little bit tighter too, because there's more people living here. And the curb out in front of my apartment, it's only like 4 foot long. I have no problem with my neighbors parking. You know, I haven't had that issue. And to restrict parking, any kind of parking on Darby, I'm totally against. There's one individual in the complex that likes to complain about it all the time. I mean, if somebody comes over and drops something off, you know, they're usually calling the cops. It's kind of ridiculous. Also, 2 years ago, I think the mayor was here. We had a gas main leak. The same night we had the electrical storm that came in and started all the fires about 2 years ago. And they actually evacuated us, and they actually brought like 3 fire trucks in here. And there was no problems at all with the fire trucks getting in, PG&E coming in at all. And like I said, there's a lot of kids also in this complex that ride their bicycles and stuff like that. And the sidewalks aren't even really, I mean, sidewalks are kind of built into like even the parking when you first come in. And because it's kind of like a cul-de-sac and you turn around and stuff like that. I mean, people come in and drop people off. There's more than just one person living in an apartment. And you have a friend come over. It's like, hey, you park in front of my garage. I have no problem with it. The one individual I mentioned, I won't personal attack. Like he'll call up the cops and say, hey, this person's parked in front of somebody's garage, and the cops come over and I go, that's actually my friend who's over here right now. So I'm totally against any of this. Being here for as long as I have, like there's more people living here than there was back when I moved in 1999. So I'm totally against any changes on Darby Place. I try to be real reasonable. I know people are hustling, bustling and stuff like that. So like if somebody has to drop something off, I don't go out there and start yelling at them, telling them to move and stuff like that. I try to be reasonable. You know, I'm trying not to pull a Karen, if I could say that. So that's kind of all I got. It's kind of an issue to me. So, I mean, I'm kind of here, and I don't have a problem with somebody parking that little 4-foot curb in front of my place. I mean, I could still get out of my garage. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tom R. Garcia. Tom R. Garcia, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, I own 154 Oxford Lane, and I just want to, I'm not repeating what I sent in written form to you guys, so I'm not a real good speaker, so just let me get it out. I'm requesting that the city to leave the parking issues on Oxford Lane and Darby Place as they have been for the last approximate 57 years under the control of the association itself. Recently, about 3 owners in the 94 unit complex have pushed to have the city regulate parking on these 2 streets. The issues mainly have been focused on the tenant parking 2 to 3 limousines on association parking spots on Darby Place. Any tenant or owner parking on a not so pretty old taxi cab on Oxford Lane. These issues would be best be left to the hands of the association. The association had an open meeting on 9/15/22. The meeting yielded more owners objecting to the city's plan on how to handle the parking issues than supporting the city's plan. Most felt that the parking issues should be handled internally versus by the city. Both owners and tenants are likely to lose more parking benefits than they are to be gained by the city taking over parking on Oxford Lane and Darby Place. The red striping would make it illegal for owners and tenants to park in front of their properties. The changing of curb parking from being exclusively for Oxford Lane and Darby Place owners and tenants will open it to all of the public, including anyone who drives in before flying out of the area. This will be tremendous loss to owners and tenants and may adversely affect the value of the properties in the future buyers and tenants. The streets of Oxford Lane and Darby Place have been owned and managed by the association as long as I can remember. I purchased in 1978, and they've probably been this way since 1965, which is indicated on one of the maps. Furthermore, given that there isn't a full set of sidewalks on these 2 streets, the builders in the city probably never intended the city to be burdened by the disagreements about parking. The parking issues that some have raised can be handled by the association and would be best to do so versus the city. I respectfully request that Oxford Lane and Darby Place stay under the control of the association. I, as an owner, have to go out and work on my property sometimes. You put red stripes out there in front of the curves of my 4 stalls in front of the units, garages. It won't be legal for me to park there with my tools and equipment and stuff. It's just going to create a nightmare, which is best not dealt with. I know that safety and everything is being addressed here. This is 65 years where we haven't had a problem with any emergency vehicles getting in there and doing what they had to do. So please allow the association to keep managing this spaces. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Alexander Davidov. Alexander, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello, my name is Alex. I live on Darby Place for more than 22 years. I completely agree with the city decision to make this place safety, and the people, disabled people, can use sidewalk and travel safety instead of using the street, because if somebody blocks the sidewalk, it's often happened anytime before, I think last month, when the police started really enforcing. And the major problem is the homeowners association, which still in violation of municipal code, which was listed in the city attorney and city manager to homeowners association manager. The letter clearly states that the signs, private property, should be removed, and erase this question for home association that didn't do anything. That's why it's confusing the authority, the police department, and other department. It should be stopped, this unlawful practice. And could you please remind, tell you this thing? I found a letter which association had written in 2014 to the police department, asking to enforce the parking violation on the street. It's like a contradiction. They ask this is our private property, and from other hand, they ask for help from the city. I think the problem is the homeowner association management. It's absolutely unprofessional from my point of view. This is another question, and I fully support the decision of the city. The safety has highest priority. If you ask anybody authority, including mayor of the city or the county city attorney or the governor of the California, they will say the safety has the highest priority everywhere, then goes other. I disagree only on one thing, to put the solid red lane along townhouses on the Darby. Why? Because if somebody park the car in front of its own garage and it doesn't block the entrance to the townhouse, that's okay. It should be in red. In this case, you should only put a red line, dotted red line, against the driveway, which will show that this space cannot be blocked. Because if the police or emergency come to this space, they have a clear entrance to the door of the townhouses. But you shouldn't put a red lane against the garage, and the people can still park their own cars in front of their garage. That will be okay. In many cities in California, the police doesn't enforce this thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Lucas. Lucas, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I live on Oxford Lane, and the ground is really rough, and there's cracks, small rocks, and when people just start playing on it, they sometimes fall, trip, and injure themselves. So I'm just asking if there's gonna be any people that are gonna fix the ground or lay something on it. That's all.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'd like to add, I see that there are some callers that have dialed into the meeting. If any of the callers would like to raise their hand, please press *9 to raise your hand. Next speaker is Jay. Jay, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, can you guys hear me? I'm not sure.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you.
So my name is Jay. I live on Oxford Lane, and I completely disagree with this proposal. I see more bad than good. I mean, yeah, you guys want to try and make it safe and put red paint, and just to make it safe. But I mean, if you put red paint there on Darby, and you're gonna be removing more parking. And like Mike G, I believe his name was, like he said, it's already very scarce here with parking as it is. I mean, down the street, the other apartments about a mile south from us, they already take up most of the parking on the bridge, the overpass of 280. I mean, if you guys drive down there, I don't know if you guys have been up this way, but if you go down that way, you can see there's hardly any parking there already. If you put more tape everywhere, I mean, more red paint everywhere, you're gonna remove parking on Darby, you're gonna remove parking on people's driveways, and people are gonna have to try to get out of, people are gonna try and get out of work early just to find parking in their own house. You know what I'm saying? I've been here for 2 years now. I've seen fire trucks come in here 2 times, maybe the time I've been here. And they've never had a problem backing up. I drive commercial vehicles. I drive an end up that's about 38 feet long. And if a fire truck can't back in there or pull in there and back up, then they shouldn't be driving a commercial vehicle. It's that simple. They go through training just like I did, and they shouldn't have a problem backing in and out. And I've never seen a problem here with the guys, with the fire trucks backing in and out. As for the police department, yeah, they could pass by, and just kind of enforce that whole, like, not parking, long ways, but parking alongside of people's driveways. That'd be fine. But I completely disagree with this. I think it'll do more bad than good. And it'll take away a lot of, like I said, a lot of parking. But for now, I'm looking out my window. I don't see any cars parking bad. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of parking spaces right now, which is good. But if you take off all the cars are blocking their own driveway and they go park on the parking lots, the parking spaces that are right now open, which is only 3, then where's everybody else going to go? Down the street where you can't. The overpass is crowded. And then what about the other people who live here, not in the apartments, but the houses, the people who live, 200 feet around the turn here? Where are they going to park? Whatever they start complaining about people parking in front of their houses or whatnot, they're going to cause even more problems for the city of San Bruno, for the cops and everything. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Lou. Lou, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lou. I'm on 110 Oxford Lane. I've been living here for almost 16 and a half years. I have the greatest neighbors in the world. And I think putting a red line on our property, which we pay taxes on, and on the street should be illegal. We should have we should have a say on this. This is something that should not even be come up. I totally disagree on Darby and on Oxford Lane. I've been in this community for 47 years and I've never heard in my whole entire life of something so ridiculous to have put a red line on your driveway. We pay taxes on the street. When we bought this home, my wife and I, this cul-de-sac, Darby, and Oxford Lane was private property. And because it's private property, leave it up to the association and us to make that decision, what we need to do and what's right. Now, I think you guys want to do something. I disagree. And it's not right. And the mayor knows who I am. He's known me ever since I was a little kid. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I do want to remind, this will be the last, I'm going to ask for the last time for folks to raise their hands. If you've spoken once, you will not have an opportunity to speak a second time. Everyone gets one opportunity. And again, this will be the last time I'm going to ask for speakers, and then we're going to bring it back to the council. And I'll turn it back over to City Hall, please.
Next speaker is Robert Marcelino. Robert, you may begin whenever you're ready.
Yes, hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm a resident on Oxford Lane. So I'm totally against this proposal. I mean, I don't see how you could stop people from parking in their own driveways. Some people have handicap issues or just surgeries and stuff. And if you eliminate the parking, there is going to be nowhere for anybody to park because the streets are just full on Crestmore. There is just nowhere to park at all. And also, if some people park in their driveways, like I have a steep driveway where I can't pull into my garage. So my car does stick out a little bit, but how am I supposed to charge my electric car if I cannot park in my driveway? So there's a whole bunch of different issues then that you guys are thinking about it, I feel. I have seen fire trucks come in and out of here and back up, no problem. I just don't see how you could stop people from parking in their own driveways. I mean, that's why we pay rent and we have a lease, or that's why people buy their homes here, is for all this. And then now it's just all going to change. I just think it's ridiculous. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is called in with last three digits of the phone number 103. Caller with last digits 103. You may begin whenever you're ready. Caller, in order to mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Carol Gutierrez, and I've lived on the cul-de-sac for 30 years. My husband is Mike Gutierrez, and on Sunday, he went to have people sign a petition against this proposal. Sunday only, he talked to 58 residents who all signed it. Everyone agrees that we are against this proposal. That represents 38 units. And it's kind of like you guys would be creating a nightmare for yourselves and for the police by doing all this. He works in his apartment, and we can see the court. We help take care of the court, and he has asked the police numerous times to help with the people parking perpendicular, which was the problem. During COVID, we got way more tenants. It's just going to get worse, not better. We're going to have more people living here, not less. And we know who lives here and whose cars is whose, and we just live together, and it's fine. There's a couple people who think, who are a little clueless on safety and might say, oh, a ball from a child touching my car is something I better call the police about. Yes, we have some people like that, but most everybody is fine, helpful. We work together. We understand all the deliveries that have to happen. We have had emergencies and everything's been fine. We know that parking outside of Darby Place, there isn't room to park. They just took away a bunch of parking. There's glass on the ground because it's dangerous. There's vandalism. There's drug deals. There's all kinds of things that happen out there. And we don't want our cars out there. It's too dangerous. And kids play here. The sidewalks are not real sidewalks that you walk up and down like you would by San Bruno Park. They're little bits of sidewalks in between places for people to drive their car there. They need to park there. Police will not ticket if you're blocking your own driveway. So making all the curbs red and doing all this stuff is going to make everybody angry because they are not going to be able to follow through with tickets for some, but not for others. And the big red line is taking away so much parking, it's not even funny. The street is wide enough for everybody to park on both sides. This is how it's been for 30 years and more than that. It's just, it was the problem was the people parking perpendicular and the people with the businesses who had multiple limousines, multiple vans, taking everybody's room, parking perpendicular. And so we have to have the landlords and the people who own the buildings make sure that everyone understands the policies and understands things. And just us talking to neighbors has helped so much, because the new people, they don't know, and they're just thinking about themselves. And we're like, hey, this is not safe. You can't do this. So we have to get it clear, have set rules, and we will all figure it out. But we don't want this nightmare that's being created.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Victor Fung. Victor, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hey, hi. Anyone hearing?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, awesome. So I live next to Lou at Oxford Lane. So I've been here for less than a year. And just to resonate this, extremely great neighbors. In fact, all around very great neighbors around here. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, to be honest, and just kind of repeat what all the other residents have already stated, and they've stated this pretty clearly. And I think the problem here just, I mean, this whole proposal, I disagree with this whole proposal. I mean, just long story short, there's more than sufficient space to enter and back out of the cul-de-sac if there's fire trucks coming in. I'd like my parking spot, you know, I like to be parking. I'd like parking available at the curb in front of me. I also like to be parking in front of my own garage if I want to. I mean, I bought the place, that's my property. I can choose to do so. I'm not interfering with any of my neighbors' life by doing this, nor are they interfering with mine. And I think this proposal comes down to common sense, right? Like, where's everyone going to park? I mean, that sounds kind of ridiculous, right? You're trying to cram, so many people into a single area and have no parking for themselves. That's kind of ridiculous. Regarding the sidewalk issue, and this is what the previous speaker was talking about too, and I'm surprised that anyone brought up the issue about the sidewalk. I mean, who still walks on the sidewalk? I mean, these aren't regular sidewalks. You have the whole road to walk on, and there's barely any cars at most times of the day, and you decide to walk on a sidewalk. That's just kind of weird, isn't it? It's kind of being particular. So anyways, long story short, I completely disagree with this, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
I am seeing Alexander Davidov next. Alexander, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I am ready. Can you hear me?
Oh,
I apologize. Let me just pause. Have you already had an opportunity to speak?
Yes, I spoke
Okay,
already.
so everybody has one opportunity to speak, and
Okay, no
you did have
problem.
that, and we do appreciate your interest, but we need to move to the next speaker, please.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you for understanding.
Next speaker I am seeing is Jeremy. Jeremy, whenever you're ready, you may begin. Hello, Jeremy. I'm sorry, it appears we're having problems with your audio. Jeremy, can you hear us? I'm sorry, it appears we are having technical difficulties with your audio. Let me see, I will go to the next speaker and we will see if we can fix the problem. Next speaker is Patrick McKinney. Patrick, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Patrick McKinney. I'm speaking on behalf of my father and my mother, the McKinneys that own 152 Oxford Lane. We believe that this is a non-issue, and we believe that the homeowners association should be the only ones taking care of this. And I think all the residents that spoke up, it's great, but I think they need to speak up at the homeowners association meeting so this issue can be resolved by our homeowners association. We don't need San Bruno, the city of San Bruno, dealing with a problem that us as neighbors can take care of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and we'll try to return back to Jeremy, please.
Jeremy, whenever you're ready, you may begin. Hello, Jeremy. If you would like to submit a public comment, you're welcome to email the city clerk's office at cityclerk@sanbruno.ca.gov. It appears we are having audio problems, and I believe that was the last hand that I see raised.
Thank you, concur. All right, if we can bring it back to the city council, please, and to my colleagues, this would be your opportunity for comments, or if there's any additional questions. Gotcha. Councilmember Medina, thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for your comments. This seems like this is going to come down, I believe, to liability. And so I think this probably is going to go to our city attorney on what can the city do to minimize the liability. There are two laws that I'm aware of that are two things. We're dealing with ADA access to sidewalks, and we're dealing with the fire code for the width of access to our fire safety personnel. So what can the city do to minimize our liability with this situation? Is there a way that we could return the streets to the homeowners association and they take on the liability? Because it's clear, like this is going to have a devastating impact to the residents. However, it's the city's responsibility to properly provide safe access. And if there was an accident or there was a fire and cars were parked where it should have been designated red, the lawsuits would come fast and furious. So those are my questions for staff. The last thing would be, somebody mentioned the condition of the road. So if these streets were previously thought to be private, have they ever been reviewed for the pavement condition index and what those numbers would be if staff has them. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. What I'd like to do is hand over to City Hall to the city manager. And if you could help facilitate whom you think would be best to answer the questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina. Javon Grogan, City Manager. In regards to Councilmember Medina's questions, might be best to take the last question first, and then we'll turn it over to the city attorney. It's important to note, one, that while it has been mentioned that these streets were private, that actually is not true per the documentation. The final subdivision map for this area designate clearly that these are city streets. I do believe that it's true that over time, they probably felt like private streets, and certainly the HOA put up signs appearing to denote that they were private streets, but they have always been, from the final subdivision map, public streets. In regard to paving, these streets are certainly on the city's paving index scale, our PCI. Staff may have the PCI number, but it's important to note that they are in a funded city capital project to be repaved. They're actually scheduled to be designed starting later on this year. So we're estimating in November, actually, of this calendar year, we'll be bringing authorization to begin design work on this street and others in the community, with paving beginning late next year in 23 or early in 24. And so they're certainly a part of our network, and there's a plan to repave them. That was actually totally disconnected from this issue and taking place during the normal course of city work to improve the quality of our streets. With that, I think I can turn it over to the city attorney to address the questions of liability.
Thank you, Mayor Medina and Councilmember Medina. In response to your question, there's several places in the staff report where public safety personnel from both fire department and police department performed site assessments to determine what restrictions are necessary for safety purposes. So it seems that you'd want to follow that advice, the recommendations. These are recommendations that were provided to improve safety. To know the exact extent of the liability, if any, we'd have to know, just exactly how dangerous would they perceive this to be. But it's clear that the recommendation is the safest course is to restrict parking as provided in the code.
Councilmember Medina.
Is there a mechanism to transfer that liability and vacating the streets back to the homeowners association?
Mayor Medina and Councilmember Medina. So I don't believe that by making it a private street, you change the liability assessment, because we've allowed the same risk or safety issues by allowing a street that is not fit for emergency access vehicles.
So clearly the recommendation is for the council to proceed. I mean, just wanted to make sure by asking these questions that we would still be liable if we try to transfer that liability, but it seems like there's no way to do that.
Mayor Medina and Councilmember Medina, I would have to research further how making the private property would affect the liability discussion. But again, I go back to the recommendation from your public safety staff is to make the area safe, would be to provide parking restrictions that are in line with the code.
Yes, okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Mason. Vice Mayor Mason.
I'm talking to myself. Thank you, Mayor Medina.
It appears that this has been discussed for some time, so I think my first question is, why is this coming before us at a special meeting and not a regular meeting?
Sure. Javon Grogan, City Manager, through the Mayor. Vice Mayor Mason, this is coming forward at a special meeting simply because of the amount of items that the City Council has on its plate. I think as the City Council knows from the tickler file, there are a number of fairly large items that are coming later on in this year. As we get close to the end of the year, the City Council actually only has 4 more regular meetings left, 2 in October that are both fairly impacted, 1 in November and 1 in December. Because this analysis was done and went to the TSPC, we thought that it would be appropriate not to let it wait until 2023, would bring it forward to you in a special meeting. There was a notice provided to the area and significant communications with the HOA, with what I think is emblematic of why we have participation here. And so, in short, it's simply based on timing and the number of items coming before the City Council.
Okay, I want to thank the public who came. It's a great turnout for a special meeting. And I would just say that in the future, we should try to save these items for regular meetings because some members of the public may not have been aware of today's meeting. I guess my next question is in regards to the packet. It's on page 5. And it says here on page 5 above Oxford Lane under Darby Place of the staff report, the red curbing proposed above would not result in the loss of public on-street parking, but it would require residents to no longer park in a manner that spills over onto the sidewalk and into the street. So when you say that whoever wrote this, that it will not result in the loss of public on-street parking, what does that mean?
Sure. That sentence means that while there may be cars that periodically park there, they are not legal parking spaces. And so it will not result in a loss of parking spaces legally designated in that area.
Okay, but based on the public comments we just heard, then it sounds like we have people that have been parking there for over 20 years. Is that right?
I don't know that, but I think that is a safe assumption that there has been parking in the area in a manner that violates both the fire code and extends into this public right of way.
Okay, so then this is not an unanticipated impact. This is clearly an anticipated impact. So what happens to those cars that have been parking there for 20 years?
And so the red curb has not yet been installed. And so I think the higher level answer is the conditions are still present to this day until council acts. I think it's also important to note, as was mentioned, and I believe is noted in the staff report, that this issue came to the city based on complaints and concerns by residents within the community. And so this is not an issue that the city noticed through its own course of enforcement. There were specific complaints which triggered significant research of city staff that ended in the recommendation and then action by your Citizen Advisory Commission. Now before you tonight for final approval.
Okay, thank you for looking into it. And then I guess as far as what one of the speakers said, why not just use your code enforcement, right? We now know that this is a public street. The city is designated as a public street. Why not use code enforcement?
Sure, thank you, Vice Mayor Mason. I think that answer would be best for the police chief, but I want to note it's we're really talking about parking enforcement. But we're going to promote the police chief to a panelist and have him respond with regard to enforcement in general. So I think Chief Johansson, we are trying to promote you and that is not working. So if you raise your hand, I think we could try and unmute you similar to a member of the public, and I see you've done so. City Clerk, may you allow the police chief to speak?
I tried to bring him in, but I think I see him now.
Yes, Mayor Medina, he is now a panelist.
Chief, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about the difficulty getting transferred over. For some reason, it didn't want to bring me in as a panelist. Yeah, there's a couple answers to this question. The first is that the reason there hasn't been enforcement up there traditionally is because this is a recent revelation that this is in fact public property. This is something that has gone on over a number of years, including way back when I was a traffic sergeant here at the police department. And the determination over those years was that this was private property and therefore the municipal code and the vehicle code could not be enforced there. So that's the first reason why enforcement was not previously occurring. As to some of the issues that are brought about in this particular staff report, it's important to note that while the police department can go up and conduct enforcement for violations of parking, be it the municipal code or the vehicle code, if there are areas that the fire code determines need to be red curbed or fire laned for the purpose of emergency access, that is completely independent of police enforcement. And my position would be that if those curbs need to be painted red as a finding of the fire marshal, which my understanding is that they have been, that a workaround for that is not to have police go up and enforce potential other violations occurring in those same areas in order to provide that access. The main reason for this is that enforcement and citations do not equate to access. Cars don't move because police officers or parking enforcement officers issue them tickets. There's still cars obstructing that access for fire and for medical personnel, only now they have a paper ticket on the windshield. And so I think that that's the reason the issue was separated in this particular staff report. This is a recommendation involving the red curbing, fire lanes at the direction of the fire marshal, and enforcement of those violations and other violations in the Darby and Oxford area are a separate issue.
Thank you for that. That's a helpful answer. So I guess my next, I've got a couple of questions, but my next question then is, if this is a finding from the fire marshal, then why do you need the council? Why do we need council action on this?
Mayor Medina, we'll answer that here at City Hall, and we will turn to the city attorney.
Mayor Medina, Vice Mayor Mason, in order to create a red curb, that's an action required by the city council.
Okay. So then going back to the actual enforcement, wouldn't that be a natural first step, is to see if enforcement makes a difference?
Yeah, we'll have the police chief articulate. Ryan, say we said earlier.
Sure. I think that the issue, as previously stated, is that these are two separate issues. So there is certainly the possibility that enforcement that has not previously occurred, because as stated, we believe this to be private property until recently, will rectify some of the complaints of some of the residents regarding parking in the Darby and Oxford area. What it will not rectify is ensuring proper fire and emergency access to those streets. And that is beyond my expertise or purview to comment on. And the reason that we're talking about the red curbing is not to try and correct parking complaints up in that area, but to try and correct the lack of appropriate emergency access in that area.
So and I'm sorry if I'm just not understanding it. I'm just trying to see this step by step. If you're trying to improve access, I guess why can't you ticket cars?
We can ticket cars for, now that we have declared this to be public property, for violations of Muni Code or the vehicle code, for sure. There are areas in this report where cars could legally park without the red curbing that would, according to the fire marshal's findings, restrict proper emergency access. That's the reason for the red curbing. The red curbing is the appropriate mechanism to ensure that proper access. Enforcement certainly can be conducted, but enforcement alone, A, will not include all of the areas that the fire marshal has currently designated that need to be red curbed, and B, will not result in the movement of vehicles, right? Citing a vehicle, again, it's going to result in a citation, and we hope that over time that corrects behavior because people don't like to be fined, but it does not result in the moving of cars. So if a parking enforcement officer goes up and tickets 12 cars on Oxford, and then the fire department has to get up there for a real emergency, they still won't be able to access the areas because the cars will still be there, albeit now with tickets on them. And so that's why I think the proper mechanism for ensuring this critical access is the red curbing in accordance with the fire code. And then enforcement is the back end support for that to ensure that there's compliance.
Okay, so then for the fire, I guess it would be the fire chief or the fire marshal. Has there been, can you point to any incidents in the past where access has been restricted?
Sure. We'll turn that to the fire chief.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Ari DeLay, your fire chief, good evening. There's no specific access issues that I'm aware of that have been resolved of there. However, just because access has not been restricted in the past for emergency does not obviously forecast a future emergency would not require that same particular access.
Thank you for that. And then are there any, I guess, maps of the actual location? I'd be curious to know, does every unit come with 1 or 2 parking spaces? How many units are there in this location? I don't see any of those details in the staff report. Because I think what I want to be, I guess, clear about in these questions is you're talking about their quality of life, right? I get home, it's really convenient to park my car and walk in my house. If we're talking about taking away parking that residents have gotten used to and accustomed to, you're really talking about changing their day-to-day quality of life. And so I'd be curious to know, what does that mean exactly? Does every unit come with 1 or 2 parking spaces? Do some units not have any parking spaces, and that's why they've been parking in this, in these lanes for 20 years? Does anyone have facts on that?
Sure. Vice Mayor Mason, I'll take that. It is our understanding, and staff is researching it, but every unit does have parking. Many of the units have a 2-car tandem garage. Some units have a carport and a 1-car garage. But when the development was constructed, every unit came with parking. Is it possible that many of the units have occupants that have more than 2 cars? Absolutely. Is it possible that some tenants or owners may not be using their garage for parking of their vehicle? Absolutely. I think we could assume that is true. But to our knowledge, all of the units were built with parking.
I'd like to, I mean, for me, as far as just my vote goes, I'd like to see something in writing, some kind of certainty on that, to confirm that that's in fact how it is, because again, we are taking away a huge quality of life piece from these residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other comments or thoughts from colleagues? Seeing no other hands, and I want to make clear to the public, I do see the couple hands, but folks do have an opportunity, as I had to do to the one caller, and please understand that. So I don't want you to feel you're being ignored. Excuse me. I apologize. Is there any other questions or comments from colleagues? Seeing none. For myself, I can say that I also worry about the parking element. I think the Vice Mayor said quality of life. There's an HOA there that maybe they could try to remedy the situation. A caller indicated that I and the city manager were up there during a gas leak and watched it unfold with the emergency vehicles, PG&E, et cetera. That's true. I was up there this afternoon as well as I have been other times, just to look on the impact and the parking element. And I do understand some frustration, which is if I'm trying to go upstairs to the apartment, for example, and there's a car blocking that might impede me to go around, right? Or with the groceries or with the children or whatever I may be doing. And so I know that, but I do know that this red zone, which concerns me, is because it will directly impact immensely. And for the callers that were on the line, or what I've seen in the petition, it was about let us try to rectify it. And I understand even staff's recommendation through the TSPC concurrence is still not resolving really what the concern is. So in essence, that's where I'm having my challenge with some of this as well. Any other comments, colleagues? Councilmember Salazar.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It really seems like the residents had a legitimate concern about an issue, and the city stepped in and came up with a solution that not only doesn't address their initial concern, but in fact could potentially make things a lot worse for them. And I think the fact that we had so many signatures on that petition, and we did get a copy of that petition, so we saw that there is a lot of opposition to this. I generally don't go against staff's recommendation, especially where safety things are involved, but it really does seem like this situation would merit going back and having a closer look and seeing if there isn't something that the HOA might be able to address on their own before we take this route. I'm glad to hear from the chief that there haven't been any real issues that have surfaced, and that during the last emergency, vehicles were able to enter and exit the area without concern. And so, being that it does seem to be at least marginally adequate, I would be in favor of deferring this decision and seeing if a better solution couldn't be found.
Thank you, council member. Myself, I would conclude with Councilmember Salazar. Any other that leaves Councilmember Medina and Vice Mayor Mason?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Medina, and then Vice Mayor Mason, please.
Yeah, that's the obvious choice, that if we could find a way to not have such a drastic change to how things are. It's definitely worth giving staff an opportunity, but my fear is they probably have, and it's their recommendation. So sending staff back to take another crack at it. I'm hopeful that something can be worked out. I don't know if it's a very interesting development back in the day, and it was probably how they could squeeze more units in there. But we can't change the past. We just have to try to make sure that our decisions are based on the facts and keeping people safe. So I would concur that we should see if anything else can be done and go from there.
Vice Mayor.
I think from my questions, I'm definitely in agreement with that. And I would also like to better understand what the designated parking situation is at this time. Thank you. And I should mention that I drive by here pretty regularly, and the parking situation right outside there is pretty horrific. So it's not like people can just not park here and find an easy parking space on the street. It's going to be really hard. So it's important that we make a very informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've heard from all four of us a similar interest. And I want to ask City Hall if that if that made sense and what you're hearing from the four of us.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina. Let me recap what I think I've heard. I think I've heard that there's not a desire on the city council to act tonight, but instead to defer this action and request that staff reapproach the HOA and try and come up with potentially another solution that will satisfy the safety concerns, as well as confirmation that there is in fact off-street parking as built for each unit there. I think in our research we have been able to confirm that, but when we come back to you, we will come back with data on each unit. But at this time, we do believe that every unit was built with 2 off-street parking spaces, either a tandem garage or a carport and a garage. I do want to say though that please note that we did not bring this recommendation to you lightly. I think emblematic of the number of people that are in this room behind me shows the level of care that the city has taken in our analysis. And this issue first came to the city in March based on concerns raised by some residents. And so know that the city has taken approximately 6 months to make sure that we understand all of the safety concerns and develop a recommendation that's before you. So we will certainly, understanding that council is not yet ready to act on this item, defer the item and go back and have conversations among city staff as well as the HOA, but certainly due to, I believe, the safety concerns being raised by the fire marshal, I'll bring this back to you in an expeditious fashion.
Okay, and thank you for summarizing that and appreciate it, as well as staff's time and diligence to this. And we appreciate what you've done and what you're going to do. With that, I'd like to move on to item B. This is under conduct. This is our second item for the evening. And we welcome back Councilmember Hamilton. Hello. And item B, please.
Adopt a resolution waiving the encroachment permit fees, staff labor reimbursement fees, and insurance rider premium cost, and appropriating $568.06 from the general funds for a road closure on Park Avenue on October 31st, 2022.
Thank you very much. And we will turn this item over to the city manager, please.
Sure. Let us bring up the screen really quickly. Right. All right, so I think we can, you can all see the title. Javon Grogan, City Manager. The item before you is consideration of waiving fees for road closure on Park Avenue on October 31st. Of course, Halloween is fast approaching, and we are bringing this item before you today. So the quick agenda we have for you is background, applicant request, council consideration and questions. Council members that have been on the council for some time will remember that this pre-COVID was an item that has come before you before. And so the city received a request to close Park Avenue between the Western End and Oak Ave, and Chestnut Avenue between Park Ave and Williams Avenue on the evening of October 31st for Halloween. The city is in the process of processing an encroachment permit, standard city procedure anytime someone requests to use city right of way. As a part of that process, there is an application fee that includes both labor cost and insurance premium. There was a request by the applicant to waive all city costs. Staff does not have the ability to waive fees that have been duly authorized and adopted by the city council. And so any such request comes to the city council as a body. And so the application waiver is for a total of $568.06. The breakdown is as shown on the screen. Our encroachment permit application fee is $150. Reimbursement for staff time to drop off barricades and materials, just under $170. And to receive a one-day rider on the city's insurance policy is $250. And so that's the total that you have before you. And this item is here for council consideration. Not an uncommon item. In prior life, I've seen items like this where streets are closed and the council deems it to be of significant public interest and would waive the fee. Sometimes cities approve them, other times they don't, but you always bring them to the governing body for a decision. And so that is what is before you tonight. Consider waiving the fees. This means that the hard cost will certainly be paid by the city and be charged to the city's general fund. And so the option before you is to adopt a resolution waiving the encroachment permit fees, staff labor charges, and the insurance, and approving the cost for the insurance rider for an amount of $568. And again, the money will come from the general fund. That concludes our brief presentation for you tonight. Here for council questions on the item, public comment, and then council action. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time on the presentation only, is there any questions on the presentation? Seeing none, let's move to the public and see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on this item at this time, and then we'll bring it back to the council for comments and our action.
I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you. I was going to say, just as a little bit of history, and then I'll certainly open it to my colleagues. We'll go to the vice mayor after me. It was established because there were some streetlight outages way back then, and it was completely dark. And if you've ever been down to this area, it gets a lot of young people. And I will say those that are maybe a little more mature in age that are down there as well in costume. And so it's just a community, but it's been obviously with the COVID-19, it's been off for a couple of years. And now it's one of those things coming back. But that's how it initiated and how it was started. And just to note, it doesn't mean if waiving the encroachment permit that the paperwork process, the appropriate information isn't relayed to the city, so everybody's on the same page and moving forward if this is approved by council. Vice Mayor Mason.
Yeah, so my first question is who is the applicant?
If you give us a pulse for a minute, we'll answer that question. It is slipping my mind, but staff is pulling up the name.
Mr. Hamilton can go while we're waiting if you'd like.
Thank you.
President Chris Gonzalez is the applicant.
Okay, great. I have actually seen the mayor handing out candy at her lovely home. So it's this is a Halloween event, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So last year when this came to us, I asked what the process was because we have received similar requests, as you're aware, for people to have street parties, block parties, but there really hasn't been a process in place, and we haven't seen any other applications like this except this one. So I am curious to know what that process is for the rest of the city.
Yeah.
And last year we were told there was no process, so I'm hoping there's a process that's equitable this year.
Vice Mayor Mason, you're absolutely right. The city of San Bruno, like many cities, do not have a process for this. The standard practice is the city goes through a process and you have a nexus study and you adopt fees. And any one seeking an encroachment permit will pay the fee. There are times, and having been someone that has worked in other cities, as I mentioned, these things happen where someone will say, "I understand you have an encroachment permit fee, and there are costs, but we're a neighborhood getting together and we want to close the street to build community. And staff said, okay, well, we will bring that to the governing body because we do not have the ability to waive fees. And it is the governing body that makes that decision to waive fees and in this case, pay the cost for the insurance rider. There are some cities that go through a more elaborate process to decide what events they will waive fees for. I will tell you in my experience, those processes are for large scale events. Like every year, we're going to have a farmers market put on by the Chamber of Commerce. And so during budget time, the council will take an action to waive the fees for that. Or we're having, when I worked in the city of Berkeley, for example, large community events every year throughout the city, they would take a action during budget time to waive those. Typically, when there are neighborhood-based programs or street fairs or closing, those are one-offs that would come to the governing body to make a decision that it is of the level that necessitates use of public funds.
So I think it would be, I'm not going to stop this. I think this is a great event. I've taken my kids to the event. We've, gotten candy from the mayor. But I would say that my greater,
from the mayor?
yes, yeah, got my son here listening.
You mentioned candy. You mentioned candy. That
I
was
mentioned candy the at 7:30, the Q word. But what I do just want to make sure of is that, like I said last year, there really does need to be some clarity around the process. And so far, it seems like we get one applicant a year, and that says a lot about there not being clarity on the process. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can respond,
please.
Yeah, candidly, I think the challenge with that is that cities typically don't sort of put on their website and announce that you can apply to the city to waive an encroachment permit process. And so in my experience, these things really come as a one-off. I do think that as we begin to transition to districts, we can have conversations with the city council around, do you as a council member want to bring forward a recommendation to sponsor one or more community events in your district and potentially have those waived. And so I think we can have some strong governance conversations or council governance conversations around how these fee waivers work with districts.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because there are people who want to have block parties to contribute to the community growing within their own backyards. I know of it. It's just people don't know how to do it. And I do just want to thank Chris Gonzalez, because like I said, we've been to the event and there's a lot of people that come from other cities. It's not just San Bruno. And so it's not an easy task to plan all this and to submit the application. But I just want to make sure other communities have the same opportunities.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And as far as noting another one is Glen Avenue, the street lighting that has happened, it'd be during when Carol Bonner, and before she was even clerk. So anyway, Councilmember Hamilton.
So most of my questions were answered, and then I kept my hand up because I had a suggestion, and then the city manager made the same suggestion. So I kept my hand up just to agree that there needs to be a clear process. It needs to be something that's available to beyond just the few groups who know about it. And I love the idea of since we're already transitioning to districts, of having each district member potentially work with the community within their district to work out these types of things and make these opportunities available. So I also agree this is a great event, and I'll be voting yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Medina.
It's a fabulous event. So I think I'm okay with the way moving forward for the district way of others knowing that it's acceptable. There is a process. So I will be supporting this project.
And Councilmember Salazar.
Just one really quick question. So unless I'm mistaken, in the past, we've always taken an action when there's a street closure. So there's usually an action by the council to allow the closure of the street. But I don't see that in tonight's resolution. It's merely to waive the fees. So is that going to be a separate action? Is that action not required for this? Just want to make sure we're thorough.
Thank you, Councilmember. City Manager.
Yes, that is going through the Public Works Department and going through TSPC and will be coming before you. This is first step of the process, a little bifurcated this year, but that will come.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to say I have been at that house, and yes, I have been asked to hand out for a little bit, and I've had another council member on the doorstep as well with me that's on this. But I've also an equal opportunity. I certainly talk to many, but I actually eat some of the candy on the way as I'm talking to the folks on the street. So I will say with that, and then we can all submit our costumes later for what we will be at the end of the month. Is there any action? This is a resolution.
Chair?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we adopt item 6B as read by the clerk.
Motion by Hamilton, seconded by Salazar. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mason,
Aye.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Aye. Resolution passes, vote 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone. What we as the city council and some staff will be going back to our closed session from original. But with that, we will not be coming back out to the Zoom link. We will not have any reportable action. Therefore, I'm going to adjourn this part to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held October the 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to the community and their interest and speaking and being here tonight. Have a good rest of the week. Take care.